Welcome to another edition of the LC SportsNet podcast series here on the Lawrence County SportsNet, powered by LCAP. Our weekly get-togethers here for the preview and recap show. They're delivered by Penn Ohio Bottled Water. Let Penn Ohio Bottled Water do the heavy lifting and deliver fresh bottled water straight to your home or work. Let's get right to it. Week 7, Game 8 for all the schools in the county. So we're down to the final 3 weeks of the regular season. We'll kick things off up in District 10, Wilmington, taking on Slippery Rock in a crucial game in terms of playoff implications. Basically, both teams with 1-4 records in region play, they need a win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Wilmington coming off of a double overtime victory over General McLean last week, 49-42. That was a non-region game. The way they won, though, is really incredible, and it just goes against conventional wisdom if you've watched the Hounds at all this year. First off, they score the game-winning touchdown on a pass. That's their first touchdown pass of the year. Buddha Book throwing it to Jamie Miller. Then, in the defensive half of that second overtime, they get the win with a defensive stop against the pass. So Wilmington really struggled against the pass over the course of the year. They keep the receiver just shy of the front pylon on fourth down, and Wilmington able to get that victory by 7. Ben Miller leading the rushing attack. Just listen to these numbers. Ben Miller, 212 yards, 3 touchdowns. Buddha Book, 99 yards and 3 touchdowns. Welcome back, Tyler McEwen, 98 yards on the ground, completing that 3-headed monster. Well, make it a 4-headed monster. You got to include the freshman Chase Mitchelltree. 9 carries in the game and had 2 receptions last week as well. Miller leading the way on the year. He's just shy of 1,000 yards. We'll probably get that on the first series of the game for Wilmington on Friday night. And again, just getting McEwen back really helps complete that really quadruple option offense that they have. Slippery Rock, they find themselves on the wrong end of a 4-game losing streak, including 3 straight losses via the mercy rule decision. Eli Anderson, the leader of this team, 797 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, but he has thrown 7 interceptions, a few too many turnovers on the year for the Rockets. Anderson also the team's leading rusher, averaging about 5 yards per carry. I think the cool part about Slippery Rock is, though, they have a good variety in their receiving corps. 5 different receivers with double-digit receptions on the year. Sam Schwartz leading the way. He also has 3 touchdowns to lead the receiving corps for the Rockets. Consistency, though, and especially in getting it in the end zone, has not gone well for Slippery Rock. They scored a season-high 17 points in the first game of the year. They've not scored more than 14 in any game ever since. How about this, too? It's also the 50th all-time meeting between the Hounds and the Rockets. Slippery Rock winning last year 41-13. Prior to that, Wilmington had won 8 of the previous 9 matchups in that one. We'll be on the air for that one, joining our friends at Mercer County Radio, Professor Briggs and Teacher Birch. We'll go that way. Professor and the teacher. There was News Talk 790 WPIC. That's a 7 o'clock start from Wilmington. The other game we'll have coverage of, Elwood City at Beaver Falls. This game being played at Geneva College. Both teams, 2-2 records in the MAC. They're tied for 4th right now in the conference. Top 5 teams will qualify from the MAC. Really a win on Friday for either of these teams. The winner basically is all but clinched a postseason bid. So this is a big one there at Geneva College. And Elwood City, talk about big. How about a big offensive rebound game last week? They put up 62 points in their win over New Brighton. 62-40, one of the top 7 scoring outputs in Elwood City history. And it was a career day on the offensive front. First off, Chris Smiley, 5 touchdown passes. That's a career high. Elijah Palmer McCain, 5 touchdowns. 4 on the ground, 1 receiving. That is a career high as well. Both now over 1,000 yards on the season, respectively, in passing and rushing. Elwood really has to find ways to keep that running game going because really against Mohawk 2 weeks ago, EPM was taken out of the equation. Only had 11 touches, 32 yards in the game. And last week, Beaver Falls did a great job of stopping the Mohawk rushing attack. Elwood, can they find ways? I mean, it's a little cliche, but that is the key. Can they find ways to run the football to then allow more room in that passing game for Michael Walters and Daylon Curry to work in the secondary? And again, that's a big key, especially if Beaver Falls is without their 4-year starter on the O-line again, Simari McCoy. Has missed the last couple of weeks. They have plenty of big boys in the trenches that are going to disrupt, but especially if McCoy is back, finding ways to get Palmer McCain the football and to keep that running game effective will be critical. Beaver Falls, last week they really struggled throwing the ball. He got some good numbers on the year, but Deshaun Anderson, it's a day that he's going to be looking in the film room and want to throw the film out a little bit. He had a couple of open looks that could have really broken the game open that they just were not quite in sync. Fix that up. Beaver Falls probably wins last week, and that's a Beaver Falls team that is really tough to beat if they can get that passing game going, especially when you look at the rushing attack. Along with Anderson at the quarterback position, one of the fastest on the field, throwing Italian Beaufort at tailback, Brooks Rawls as the bruiser back. They go into that power set like they did against Mohawk last week, and then they'll spread it out. You get the ball on the edge with like Denari Harris, Gary Pugh, Zayshawn McKelvey, the district champion, and Michael Blackshear in terms of the 200 and 400-yard dash. That's a very, very difficult combination to deal with. So Elwood City, too, has to find ways to stack the box but not allow too many one-on-one opportunities when they do throw it down the field. Beaver Falls, well, they're stuck on win number 699 in their career, by the way. So, again, going for win number 700. This rivalry goes back over 100 years, that is. Since 1907, Beaver Falls won that first game back in 1907 by a score of 11-0. This will be the 96th all-time meeting between the Wolverines and the Tigers, and that's the 22nd straight year that they've played against each other. Beaver Falls has won 66 versus just 24 victories and 5 ties in their contest. Last time Elwood City won in this game was back 28-0 in 2017. We'll be back after this brief break and break down the other 6 games going on Friday night when we return. Week 7 preview show podcast. It's delivered by Penn Ohio Bottled Water.
Don't get left out to dry. Call the Penn Ohio Bottled Water Company for the fastest and most efficient bottled water delivery service in the area. Penn Ohio offers bottled water ranging from 16.9-ounce bottles to 5-gallon jugs, perfect for your next event or office water cooler system. Also, don't forget to ask about their custom labeling options. Visit PennOhioBottledWater.com for more information and to get a quote on their delivery services. Whether it's at home, in the office, or on the sidelines, Penn Ohio has you covered.
Continuing on as we get closer to the stretch run, before we talk about the other games, just a reminder coming up, we'll get previews when the brackets are unveiled for the volleyball championships. That should be in after next week. Yeah, this week and next week remaining in the WPIAL, and then we'll have soccer broadcasts and preview show podcasts coming up as well in the near future once those brackets are unveiled. Also want to give best of luck. At the time of this recording, the Mohawk and Neshannock Lancer golf teams are going to be competing Thursday in the WPIAL Championship. They placed first and second in their semifinal match, and the teams are just a one-stroke difference between first and second. So impressive stuff there. Those are 2 of the final 6 teams remaining in the WPIAL Championship. So hopefully by the time these games are happening on Friday night, we have at least 1 color medal making its way back to Lawrence County. We're hoping we can bring back gold and silver. So best of luck again to both the Mohawk and Neshannock golf teams. And we'll talk about both Mohawk and Neshannock on the gridiron here momentarily. But let's first look at Class 4A, Newcastle against Aliquippa. Undefeated Aliquippa coming up to Taggart Stadium to take on winless Newcastle. We'll start with the quips. Fresh off his commitment to Penn State, how about Tyke Hayes? He's the silent assassin. You really haven't heard a lot about him this year, but he has 7 yards per carry and 11 touchdowns. And more than anything, too, again, the variety of the offense, the passing game that has developed in Aliquippa the last 3 or 4 years. Quentin Good, he's just shy of 1,000 yards passing, 12 touchdowns. How about Khalil Good, though, too? He's splitting time with Quentin. And the Killer Q's, how about 648 yards and 7 touchdowns of his own for Khalil? So those two have been a nice duo throwing the football. Not many schools can say they've had 13 different players score touchdowns on the season. Well, that's what Aliquippa has. And in comparison, Newcastle, they have a team total of 13 touchdowns on the year. Battled last week against Chartiers Valley. could not keep up in the second half, a 35-14 defeat. Kyrell Harris able to get a touchdown pass in the game last week, getting that variety, so it's not all on the Malik Jeffersons and Kayvon Harris hoping for the big runs. That's going to be the key. Can they get Kyrell moving out of the pocket and maybe find some openings down the field? But this is a very talented Aliquippa team, obviously, that they are going to be facing. Newcastle actually holds the all-time record, 25-19-3 over Aliquippa. But how about this? The last time Newcastle beat the Quips, 1987. What's significant about that is they beat the Quips in the regular season, but then lost to them later that same year in the playoffs. And it's not been great in recent history for Aliquippa, for Newcastle against Aliquippa so far, because 54 points last year, that's the fourth most points Newcastle allowed all time. 63 points at the Pit 2 years ago, that's the worst defeat in Newcastle history. Hoping to right the ship and at least be competitive against an undefeated Aliquippa team. It is going to be tough sledding on homecoming there at Newcastle. The other game that we'll have to take an eye on, a couple other MAC conference games. Look at the two teams tied for first, Mohawk and Neshannock. They're doing battle on the golf course on Thursday. Eyes kind of looking towards that potential Week 9 matchup between the Warriors and the Lancers, but they still have to make their way there. 2 more games to go. We'll start with Mohawk at Freedom on Friday night. Freedom at 1-3, they're fighting for their playoff lives. They're coming off, really, though, back-to-back shutout defeats. They've only scored 10 touchdowns on the year. Kind of a back-to-basics, I think, approach right now because, you're held to just 42 yards of offense last week. It's not going to get any easier this week, but Ty Schultz and company going against the Mohawk defense, they've been stellar. Mohawk's allowed 6 touchdowns in Week 0 to Union. Since then, a total of 7 touchdowns allowed, and it's the bend don't break, getting the clutch turnovers at the right time. Justin Boston, a diving interception each of the last 2 weeks. AJ Verdi, Joey Nail, they've been great at the linebacker position. The Chapman Bros, man, they're tooting their own horn during halftime. I'm going to give them a little fanfare here. How about the boys in the trenches, also out there during halftime, marching with the band each and every week at half. Oh, by the way, 4 sacks each, multiple forced fumbles each on the season. Oh, by the way, that Jay Rona guy's still pretty good. Leads the WPIL with touchdown passes. He's got 26 on the year, 11 of them to Bobby Fadden. Both those numbers are program records, by the way. Oh, and just as a reminder, go back and look at what Blake Logan did 2 weeks ago and the ridiculous catch and run you saw from Dante Retort last week. The 53rd meeting. And how about this? They've played every year, has Mohawk and Freedom, since 1998. The other game featuring the MAC conference leader, Neshannock, at winless Riverside. Neshannock's run game, they've been incredible. Quiet, kind of like a Ty Keith Hayes quiet. Not hearing a whole lot about it, but throw in the thunder of Pat Argero and the lightning of Anthony Eakin. And let's just call Gino Mazzocco the wind, because if you forget about the quarterback, he's off right through that seam you left in the middle of the field, flying down the field before you even realize what has hit you. So thunder, lightning, and the wind, we'll call it, for the Neshannock rushing attack. Argero, 10 touchdowns to lead the way. Eakin and Mazzocco each have 6 rushing scores on the year. How about Anthony Bonner, though? A punt return for a touchdown last week, as well as his first 2 receiving touchdowns of the season. That's going to be key to keep developing that passing game a little bit more and more as the year goes on. Riverside, they've had a rough year, haven't they? Now 0-6 on the season. Good to see Robbie Janis back. He was injured against Shenango. Hadn't seen him since. Glad he's back after missing nearly a month. It's crazy, though. This team scored 3 touchdowns against Shenango, but only 3 touchdowns in the other 5 games on the year. They were shut out last week, 53-0 to Western Beaver. The name I want to keep an eye on the outside is Zach Hare. He's been a nice little addition for quarterback Aiden Garcia in the passing game. That's going to be the key one to watch, not only in this game, but over the last 3 games of the year, as the Panthers just try to get a 1 in the W column here, to be honest, for our friends from down south. It's the 10th straight year the Panthers are facing the Lancers, and I love this history. Neshannock, first off, has won 4 straight. They got back-to-back shutouts, but back in 2015, how about Neshannock putting up the most points in program history, a 71-48 victory. What an incredible game that was at Bob Ledgey Stadium. This one down at the home of the Panthers, though, on Friday night. 3 games left to go, 3 1A battles. We'll start with Union at Northgate. Braylon Thomas, well, he's just been not quiet. Braylon Thomas getting it done. Last year, 16 games played for Union. He threw for 1,272 yards and 12 touchdowns. Just over half as many games played, 7 games so far this year. Thomas, already more passing yards, 1,276, and 19 touchdowns. And I think the most impressive part, though, only 3 interceptions on the year. The Union passing game has been incredible. And it's also huge because that means fewer times that they've had to rely on the legs of Thomas, though he still is averaging 92 rushing yards per game and leading the team with 11 rushing touchdowns. The receivers, Dane Jonke, 10 of those 19 touchdowns caught on the year. He actually caught one of those 10 from the backup quarterback as well in Lucas Stanley, but the balance has been incredible. Jonke's got 24 catches, Grayson Blakely with 21, Mike Dunn with 20. That variety has been really fun to watch and makes it really difficult for defenses to key on any one target. Northgate's offense on the other side, they were baffled last week really in the second half against Laurel. They started strong, but couldn't score in the second, third, or fourth quarter. Really, they need a win against Union or Rochester in these next 2 weeks to have a shot at the postseason. They have a non-conference game in Week 9. They have a 3-headed monster, though, of Darius Fields, Austin Mitchell, and Santion Lane. Those trio of athletes can score from any spot on the field. Northgate hosting the Scotties. It's the 8th straight year, by the way, that the Scotties and Flames have done battle. Union holding a 5-2 all-time record. We just talked about Laurel defeating Northgate. Let's talk about the Spartans traveling down to the Southside Rams. It was the first conference win of the season last week. 35-12, Laurel defeating Northgate. They stuck to their guns. They kept finding a way to get the ball into the hands of Big Ben Hennon, and he performed. Another 200-yard rushing game, a couple of touchdowns. Colton Carlson, though, I think is the one I'm most interested in, just because he's emerging as a top target these last 2 or 3 games in a pass game that has been improving each and every week, which is allowing bigger holes for Hennon to work with. And whether it's Lucas Santini or Jackson Souders behind center, they're finding Carlson in these last 3 games. It's been fun to watch. Santini, unfortunately, missing last week, but Jackson Souders getting 2 touchdowns to Colton Carlson last week in that win at home. Hopefully you can see Santini back as well and get both of the killer S's in the backfield. But now it's a trip down to undefeated Southside. Listen to these numbers. They own the top scoring offense in the entire WPIAL, 47 points per game, but even more impressive, how about last week's win? 52-12 over Shenango. The impressive part, 12 points allowed. That's the first time they've allowed multiple touchdowns in a game so far this season. Brody Almashi, 10 passing touchdowns, 11 rushing touchdowns. He's only averaging 7 pass attempts per game because they don't need to do any more. Between him, Ryan Navarre, and A.C. Corfield, that trio of runners, how about 10 touchdown runs each for Navarre and Corfield? Corfield also the team's leading receiver on the year. At the pace they're going, if they play 2 postseason games, it looks like all 3 runners could be eclipsing 1,000 yards from scrimmage. And that's just based if they keep on their current track in terms of yardage per game. Game number 16, by the way, in this rivalry's history, dating back to a 13-13 tie the first time they played, all the way back in 1962. Laurel's won 8 in a row against the Rams, but it's going to be a tough task, as again, Southside coming in with a perfect 7-0 record. Well, that's it for the games on Friday night, but one more on Saturday. Let's talk about Shenango traveling to Summit Academy. That high-scoring defeat for the Cats did have some bright spots. It was another touchdown pass from Sam Myers, the 5th of the year, caught by Colton Fedrizzi. The lack of a running game, honestly, it's really hurt the Cats over the course of this year. I think that's got to be a point of emphasis. Get back into a bit of a rhythm in the ground game on Saturday in Herman. Also, just holding on to the football. Turnovers really cost Shenango dearly in losses the past couple of weeks. And frankly, in their upset win over Rochester, they didn't cough up the football at all. And that was the big reason why the Cats are able to take down the Rams at home in that game. You can't give Summit Academy short fields or a chance to get possession on the punt returns or the interception returns, because they will take it to the house more often than not. You really don't know what to expect from Summit Academy offensively from year to year, from week to week with the Knights program. But they've put up some decent performances this year. Keep an eye on that because they were competitive against Springdale and Riverview, and they only lost by 8 to Northgate, a team that Shenango was unable to defeat 2 weeks ago. So you can't take this team lightly at all. Led by Kymere Robinson, he's got 7 touchdowns on the season for the Knights. 10th game between Shenango and Summit Academy, a 6-3 all-time record for the Cats, including a big 61-6 victory a year ago. There it is, our long-winded Week 7 preview show as we get down closer to the stretch run. Thanks again to Penn Ohio Bottled Water. Don't forget to ask about their custom label options, and we're glad to have them on board and glad to have you on board as we preview each and every week the big football games. And again, we'll continue this through the postseason and into the winter and spring sports as well on the Lawrence County SportsNet podcast series. LCSportsNet.com, powered by LCAP.